ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for watching the show. This is your top human rights organization review, and I'm your host, Bryce Dolan. Today on the show, we're going to look at 5 different top human rights organizations and look at the top stories from each one of their websites. To begin the show, Human Rights Watch said today, ahead of International Children's Day, President François Hollande should ensure that France endorses the International Safe Schools Declaration. The Safe Schools Declaration is a non-binding political agreement open for state support at an international conference in Oslo, Norway in May 2015. Attacks on students and schools is a global problem in desperate need of a global response, said Bénédicte Jeanrod, France director at Human Rights Watch. The Safe Schools Declaration lays out many common-sense steps that committed countries can voluntarily take to help ensure that students and schools are better protected even during times of war. Now, 56 countries have already endorsed the Safe Schools Declaration, including half of the European Union member states, 13 NATO members, and 12 La Francophonie members countries. Now, many of the countries most affected by the problem of attacks on schools and military use have joined the declaration, including Afghanistan, the Central African Republic, the Dominican Republic of Congo, Somalia, South Sudan, and Sudan. A second Safe Schools conference will be hosted by the government of Argentina on March 28th through the 29th of 2017. France has previously championed the Paris Commitments, a declaration focused on the protection, liberation, and rehabilitation of children involved in armed conflict. So far, 105 countries have endorsed these Paris Commitments, and France will host a conference to mark the 20th anniversary of that process in February 2017. But it has not yet endorsed the Safe Schools Declaration. France should make it a priority. Now, French President Hollande should protect schools from military use. We're going to help campaign for that with the hashtag #ProtectSchools. It's time for France to sign the Safe Schools Declaration. Now, next, according to Amnesty International, Facebook, Microsoft, and LinkedIn are among the tech firms expected to be on a charm offensive with Chinese officials at the World Internet Conference in Wuhan. Now, China has made clear to Western companies what tune they must dance to if they want to gain or keep access to the riches of the Chinese market, currently dominated by national players like Tencent and Sina. A new cybersecurity law passed in China last week goes further than ever before in tightening the government's already repressive grip on the internet, embodied by its Great Firewall. It is a vast human and technological system of internet censorship without parallel in the world. The new law codifies existing abusive practices and seeks to turn tech companies operating in China into de facto state surveillance agents. Now, the new law forces companies to pass on vast amounts of data, including personal information, and to censor users' posts with insufficient safeguards to protect freedom of expression and the right to privacy. Companies would be liable for substantial penalties if they failed to do so, and there is no transparency about how the data will be used by the authorities. Now, the Chinese president has insisted that no cybersecurity means no national security. but companies do not have to look far to see the chilling reality of what national security can mean under China's broad and vague legal provisions. Over the years, the government has detained hundreds, if not thousands, of people on national security charges, often solely for expressing views online critical of the government. So those three companies, Facebook, Microsoft, LinkedIn, they are facing a huge discussion with China here at the upcoming Internet World Conference. Now next, the International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC, takes us back to South Sudan. In times of conflict, people are forced to flee from their homes, leaving everything they own behind. Many of them end up in unfamiliar places, and they have to struggle to survive. In South Sudan, the ICRC provides emergency assistance to help displaced people meet their most urgent needs.
هو ساقر جاب بس هاجمنا بس زيادة فجعا في البيوت بس ونين ما عملنا حاجة ما عارفين إذا نيجي مشاكل ونين نيجي في غابة ده يا سبب خلانا يا نين نجينا هنا في القلعة.
حاجات كلها أنا خليت هناك نار آخر كله نار أرق بيت وأنا ما جبت ولا حاجة وهنا أنا متأسف ناكل وين ونلبس وين وهلا ده كله أنا ما أعرف لا زر.
ده كلام تجربي أنا تقلت بعد في جوا المويه عشان أنا داير لقيت حاجات بتعيالي تجربي. أنت بتأكل في جوا المويه كان لقى زي 3 ولا كم كده أنت تشيل مال السوق أنت تشراه أنت تجيب له إيش لعيالك.
What a great job the ICRC is doing there in South Sudan. We've been covering the ICRC all year long, all summer, all fall, and they do nothing but great humanitarian work for people in need. Now, Refugees International calls out the continued failure to protect the Rohingya. A year and a half ago, thousands of desperate Rohingya and Bangladeshi migrants and asylum seekers were abandoned at sea, shocking and horrifying many around the world. But more than a year later, little has changed. Governments and international agencies have fulfilled few promises to better protect Rohingya who, facing persecution in Myanmar, have seen flight as their only survival option. Rohingya asylum seekers in Malaysia and Thailand, including many women and children who survived the May 2015 boat crisis, continue to face the threat of detention and restricted access to the most basic human rights, including to livelihoods, health care, and education. Now, faced with many of the same restrictions as in Myanmar, the lives of Rohingya in Malaysia remain much better than life in Myanmar, only really in relative terms. As tensions flare once again within Myanmar, the possibility of another boat crisis remains real, but whether international reaction would be different remains unclear. It is time for regional governments and the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, to act. Despite the many high-level meetings and constructive ideas and commitments, little of substance has been implemented to suggest that the response to any future crisis would be any different. So, again, we are seeing the Rohingya continually oppressed, not just in Myanmar now, but in Malaysia and Thailand. Now, we're going to keep moving along so we can finish the rest of these articles. If you want to look more into these articles, you can find the links directly to them below in the description. Now, to end the show, UN Watch called on Canada to use its newly announced status as a $25 million donor to support a commission of inquiry into the UNRWA teachers' pervasive incitement to anti-Semitism and terrorist attacks in their Facebook posts. Now, the names of the UNRWA staffers and links to their Facebook pages were sent today to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. While the Trudeau government preemptively promised to fund training for UNRWA staff on the proper and neutral use of social media, UN Watch said that this approach misses the point. The core issue is not what UNRWA teachers reveal online, but the fact that racists are being hired in the first place to teach children, said Hillel Neuer, the Canadian-born lawyer who leads UN Watch. We're not calling merely for hateful posts to be removed. We're calling for every anti-Semitic teacher to be fired and for the senior UNRWA officials who keep recruiting them to be fired too. Sadly, UNRWA itself refuses to respond to our repeated reports of racist incitement by their school teachers and principals, and so the only recourse is for donor states like Canada to demand accountability, said Neuer. UN Watch in the past year sent UNRWA 3 reports documenting how their teachers and school principals incite to racial hatred, anti-Semitism, and terrorism on social media. Now, UN Watch had identified more than 30 separate perpetrators. UNRWA has never contacted UN Watch in response. Now, UNRWA's policy of impunity, denial, and deflection only enables more incitement and violence. It's time to put an end to the pattern and attack of these school principals, teachers, and staff members posting anti-Semitic and terror-inciting images. A recurring theme that suggests a pathology of racism and violence within UNRWA, one that must be rooted out, said Neuer. Now, Neuer said the teacher's incitement to racism and violence constitutes a gross violation of UNRWA Regulation 1.4, which requires staff members to conduct themselves at all times in a manner befitting their status as international civil servants, and not to engage in any activity that is incompatible with the proper discharge of their duties with the agency. Specifically, they shall avoid any action, and in particular any kind of public pronouncement which may adversely reflect on their status or integrity, independence, or impartiality which are required by that status, and shall at times bear in mind the reserve and tact incumbent upon them by reason of their international status. So the teachers of the UNRWA, what they have been doing, ladies and gentlemen, is they have been reposting stuff on Facebook. These teachers and school principals have. They've been reposting stuff on Facebook about Hitler, about Nazis, about anti-Semitism. One teacher went ahead and posted 10 of Hitler's best ideas on Facebook. And what UN Watch is calling for here is not a removal of these posts from social media, but they're calling for a removal of these teachers from the classroom, because they don't want these people who are posting these things on social media to have access to teach their children, which makes complete sense to me. I don't want somebody who's posting stuff about Hitler, positive stuff about Hitler on Facebook, teaching my child. So, the UN Watch is doing all they can to call out these teachers and these principals, but the UNRWA has not done anything to get back to them about these serious violations. So hopefully this continued documentation, these continued investigations by UN Watch will really help this anti-Semitic, racist ordeal going on in schools go away. But we'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, that does it for the show today, though. You can find the links directly to all these articles and their respective websites below in the description. I encourage you to check them out in their entirety. Feel free to go to the article and read the entire article. If you're doing that, make sure you give us a like on Facebook or follow us on Twitter and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get notified every time a new video is posted. But thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That does it for your Top Human Rights Organization review. I was your host, Bryce Dolan.